And authorities identified the remains of Fox Entertainment executive Gavin Smith more than a week after hikers discovered his body. Smith disappeared in 2012 after leaving a friend's home. Authorities located his black Mercedes at a storage facility last year, but his whereabouts remained a mystery. Autopsy results are now pending. And 3 years ago, by executive order, U.S. President Barack Obama charged a periodic review board with reviewing the cases of every inmate held at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to determine whether they pose a threat to U.S. national security and if a case against them would hold up in court. Who should be released was the question. On Wednesday, the panel released its first detainee, bringing the prison population total to 148. 37-year-old Kuwaiti-born Fawzi Al-Odah arrived in Kuwait Thursday and was reunited with his family after 12, almost 13 years in detention. In a recent opinion piece for the New York Times called "Who Are We the People?", the inmate's attorney, Eric Lewis, argues that the indefinite retention of the Muslim prisoners has trampled their religious and human rights. Well, Eric Lewis is with us. He is a human rights attorney who represented a number of Guantanamo and Afghan detainees. He's also a partner at the law firm Lewis Bach. Welcome to Arise America, Eric. Thanks so much for being here.
Nice to be here.
You know, it's very difficult to even fathom that an individual would be detained for almost 13 years. It would be 13 in February, sure, without any charges brought against them, without any adjudication for them. That's just almost unimaginable. Sort of walk us through the process of how he was released.
Sure. Fawzi came to Afghanistan in 2001, in the summer of 2001, well before the war. The war started. He tried to get out. He turned himself in to Pakistani border guards and asked to be taken to the Kuwaiti embassy and ended up in Guantanamo. And, you know, for years, the Bush administration propagated the myth that these were the worst of the worst, and they were treated that way, and there was no need to sort out who was who.
Eric, help me understand, because as I understand it, he was a part of a group that was determined to be a threat to national security and that could not be trusted to be released. So how did he get out of that group and then deemed able to be released?
Well, we had the periodic review board hearing in June. We did it down in Guantanamo Bay. There was a panel from 6 federal agencies that heard it in Washington over closed-circuit TV. And they had time to meet Fawzi, to question Fawzi, and also to understand that the government of Kuwait was going to give the United States all the assurances that it needed, that there was going to be no problem with Fawzi when he got home.
And that's one of the conflicts with many of these detainees, is there's no assurance that the governments of their home countries will keep an eye on them or detain them in their home country. What are the conditions of his release from Guantanamo Bay?
Sure, and Fawzi agreed to these conditions because he wanted to go home, he wanted to see his family. He's going to spend 6 months in a rehab facility. It's a rehab facility that was designed by the Kuwaiti authorities. It's run by a British trained psychiatrist, and it's to help him reintegrate to a society that he's been away from for, as you said, nearly 13 years. He was 24 when he went off, a young teacher, and now he's 37 years old. He's missed sort of the prime years of his life, and they want to make sure that his reintegration is successful. So he'll see his family, he'll have access to medical help, psychiatric help, and to make sure that everything goes well. And he's also agreed to surveillance guarantees. He's got nothing to hide, and he wants to go home, and he wants to resume a normal life.
Well, how long will he be surveilled or monitored? Because many of the people who oppose closing down Gitmo and releasing these prisoners, there have been some that were released, and they went back and lodged attacks against the West, and most specifically against the U.S. So what assurances does the U.S. have that the Kuwaiti government will keep an eye on him and that he won't become a threat to our national security?
Well, first of all, there have been very few of those incidents, and they're very unfortunate. And there was a kind of haphazard approach to releasing people in earlier years. They didn't know who they had, and they didn't know who they were releasing. And indeed, some of my clients have said, boy, we were surprised that they sent that guy home. And yet others remained. So he's going to spend 6 months at the rehab facility full time. And then if he's doing well, he'll spend 6 months going out during the day to work, to see his family, coming back at night. And at each juncture, he'll be evaluated to make sure that he's ready to take the next step. And after that, he's basically said, you can watch me. I don't need to leave Kuwait. I don't want to leave Kuwait. You can have my passport.
Let me ask this, and I want to turn to a couple of other things before I have
Sure.
to let you go. But what role did Fawzi being a Kuwaiti citizen play in that the country has the resources to provide the terms of the release and are willing to work with those terms of release?
Well, I think the Kuwaiti government really went all out to get Fawzi back, and I think it was a model of government-to-government cooperation. There are a lot of governments that either don't have the infrastructure or can't provide those guarantees. Although the irony is, there are a lot of folks, for example, Yemenis, who everyone agrees have been cleared for release for years, never did anything, and now our government says they can't be released because Yemen can't give those guarantees because it's not a sufficiently secure government. But they haven't done anything. But they're worried that they'll be targets for recruitment for al-Qaeda. So they didn't do anything. They've spent 12 or 13 years in release, and they have to stay because their home country can't protect them from al-Qaeda. So that's a strange situation that has to be solved.
Very briefly, before I let you go, I just
Sure.
wonder what your take is on this new Republican Congress. Barack Obama ran on the promise to shut down Gitmo. He found out that that was much more difficult than it was to say, and then now we have this Republican Congress that probably will not want to shut down Gitmo. Does that bring concern to you?
It does. I mean, Gitmo has been a huge political football, and even conservatives who believe in the rule of law understand you can't hold people without charge forever. We have a surveillance apparatus. If you have evidence, try them. But there's no doubt that it's become a political football that really bears no relation to security threats, which have to be assessed on an individualized basis. And all these folks are lumped in, and Gitmo has become, just as it's a symbol in the rest of the world of how, in many ways, we've lost our way, it's a symbol in the Congress of how to show toughness on security. In reality, it's neither.
Yeah, Eric Lewis, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.